we do have a speaker tonight. I'm not the pro. Umesh Bhuju, he's been with us before. I also want to introduce him again. That's coming from Nepal. And when he was in Nepal, he had self-certified as a guide, led by a mountain guide, on the Nepalese Himalayas. Since then, he came to the United States on the BU, went to graduate BU, I think it's a great achievement, and also from Johnson, Wales. And 7 years ago, he opened the best coffee shop in downtown Ipswich, in Florida State. And he has fair trade coffee there and other things. We're fortunate to have Umesh with us tonight. And we asked him particularly to get us up on the mountain and his own experiences. To me, first-hand experiences are the most valuable thing. That's what actually happened. Now, one thing that's important to this group, Historical Society, we've done it before, do not hesitate to interrupt. You show a ladder going across, you go fast, stop him and say, who's the first one that went across? Let's find out. And who's the last one? And how did you get out of this? Is that all right with you? Yes. Thank you. Now he'll be talking back there, because he's going to run his own machine. But if there's any questions, speak right up. Make him stop and go back and slide if you want to. Now can you, our younger friends, if you want to move up, you know the chairs for you. Be sure you can see. And we also welcome a few people from Ipswich from all the way down to experience the joys of the Lynnfield Historical Society. So let's give them a good hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. I'm happy that I'm here again. I was here maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago talking about this similar theme about Mount Everest and what it's like to be as a guide in the Himalayas. That's what I talked about when I came here last time. So we probably would do the same thing. Like you said, if you want to interrupt and ask me questions when I'm talking, which is fine with me. We can get into a little more details, but as far as the time is concerned, I'm sure I have put down a few 98 slides, 99 slides, so I want to show them all. So if we get on longer questions, and I try to make it nice and short so people would understand, what it's really meant. Once you get that, then I'll just move on to other slides, and so that way we can slides on time as we can get home. So once again, my name is Umesh. Right now, I live in Topsville with my family. I have 3 children. I'm 7 years old. I have a wife, and I have a coffee shop, like Donald said. That's what I do for giving food coffee. So, Zoomies. So I'm going to go. Yeah. I'm going to go back down, and I'm going to start with my slides. If you can't hear, just let me know. I'll make my voice a little bit louder. So, again, thank you.
Do you want one light on?
Yeah, just a second. Yeah. I have these slides here just to show you exactly where Himalayas are. Himalayas are in between India and Tibet, part of China. Tibetan part, which is northern section of Nepal, and if you go south, it will be India. And mostly east and west also part of the India. So mostly part of the Nepalese border is mostly with the India, and our northern section is mostly all Tibetan part of the border, in between Tibet and Nepal. So Himalayas, that actually the word came from Sanskrit. The word Himalayas Hima means Him means snow, and Aloe means home. So home of snow. So that's how the word represents or word defined the Himalayas mean. And Himalayas actually goes from all the way from Afghanistan, Pakistan to all the way to Bhutan. So it's pretty one of the longest range, and very young mountain. So a lot of cliffs, a lot of mountains to climb on. A lot of people from all over the world come out there. Not only Nepal, they go all the way to Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, all those India. All those countries they go and climb. So just make sure it's nice. Good. Yeah. Some of this, most of these slides are taken by my small camera. When I actually go for my trip, I do not bring bigger cameras or heavy-duty cameras. So it was taken by small cameras, Canon small cameras, and so. Some of those slides probably, came out okay, and some probably not great. So if you have any questions around details, just let me know, so I can explain a little bit more details. The mountain we are looking at, this is Mount Everest on the back, black rock. Right in the front, the mountain called Nuptse, and on the left, it's a mountain called Lola. Those are also pretty big, high mountains, but it's not high like Mount Everest. Mount Everest, it goes up to 29,028 feet, and the one on the front, it goes up to 24,000 feet. Because of the name, the highest mountain, people do like to go there and at least see the mountain. So you have trekkers go there and see this mountain, and there are some climbers who would like to climb this mountain. So there's a lot of people go out there and see. And this place, Mount Everest Base Camp, and this particular region, actually Everest region, they also call Kumu area. It's get really crowded during fall, which is same like here. Fall would be September, October, November, and winter a little bit quiet. Not a lot of trekkers. A base camp temperature goes up to negative 40 degrees in winter months. So when you actually breathe, it freezes sometimes. So that's the kind of also the wind chill factors and all this thing. Before we get up to the mountains, I want to show you some pictures for what it's like when you get to the Kathmandu, which is the capital of Nepal. Once you get there, of course there are some buildings, but you probably not gonna see like a skyscrapers there because the type of because of the landlocked country and skyscrapers and things like that are not. I believe it's not feasible to build like that type of high buildings. But you would see this type of stupas though, beautiful stupas, Buddhist stupas. And Hindus, Buddhist statues like this inside the monastery, and paintings, Hindus, deities and temples. This is what it's like. It's like getting into sort of like a museum of Hindus and Hindu temples and Buddhist monastery. And most of the places inside in downtown area. Some places you cannot even drive. You can bike, but no driving. So people will be walking, get to the work just like that, as you can see there. And at the same time, this type of person, like we call them Babas. The guy, he's a devotee of a Hindu god named Shiva. And so he was just walking around. Generally, he would stay right near the temple, Shiva's temple. And say it again.
What's in the bucket?
Oh, that's the little stuff he would get from people. It's the donations, like rice or sometimes vegetables, money, pennies. Pennies mean in Nepal we have a different money, but anyway, so that type of things he would get. And end of the day, what he would do is he would sort out everything, and that's his meal. He would eat only one meal a day, but doesn't look like he would eat one meal a day. But that's the type of lifestyle he would have.
And sometimes they are pretty good at reading palm, so he can tell you the future of your life. Like he can be a fortune teller, and so he would get a little bit more money if that's the kind of personality he has. And so we are right in actually right outside Kathmandu. It's called another town called Bhaktapur, which is just 6-7 miles right outside. And even from Kathmandu, this is what it's like if you hike right around the Kathmandu. Only snow-peaked mountains are actually people would consider mountains. And right around that, hills, right around the other mountains with the, with the green, they won't consider themselves, consider those a mountains. Those are more of hills, they call it, and we're gonna see some of the mountains. That's how the way they would live. That's the national flower of Nepal, rhododendron. Generally, you see them in on a higher, like about I would say 20 feet, 15 to 20 feet tree. Unlike here, we have a little bit of maybe 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet tall, but here in Nepal it's totally different. It's really tall trees you would see these rhododendrons. Paddy fields, because we are still in Kathmandu, the valley. Right around the valley, it's of course the mountains, and in the middle, people would there's a section where people has this type of field. And they generally tend to live not too far from their farmland or farming areas. So they are pretty much, somebody from their household would like to look after the farm pretty much every day, sort of like a thing. And they would go and look at things and see if there's anything needs to be get done and things like that. So as you can see, the houses, they would be very close to the house with their farm. And sometimes, if it's not farm, it's not field, is not belongs to them. The people would be from not too far, like half hour, 45 minutes, and sometimes you probably would see like an hour, not more than that. Generally, they would like to stay not too far from their place. One time, the most I believe it was close to a little over 90% of the population rely on agriculture. But it's a small landlocked country. It's a small size of Arkansas, but population very big. When I left 20 years ago, it was 19 million, but now it's 29 million.
What are they growing?
In the fall, you would see a lot of wheat. They are growing wheat. And rainy months and right before monsoon, you would see a lot of rice fields. And so in between, they would have like a maize, and they would have some type of vegetables going, like vegetables would be mostly like what I would say, mustard plants and things like that. Cauliflowers. It all depends, the location and type of water they can get and things like. And if you go further north, and generally you don't see rice or you don't see wheat. Sometimes yes, and mostly buckwheat. Actually, the yellow part that must be like a mustard plant. They do a little bit of in between. Their fields, some fields had some stuff going, and some field had some stuff going. So, and there is a family of as I said earlier, this is how they live. If you look up that mountain there's houses up there, and so terraced field, and so they basically the school and things like that would be maybe. Some kids probably they would walk about maybe half hour, 45 minutes, and some kids maybe less. And when I was growing up, from my village, from my house to get to school, it was 45 minutes for me to get to school. So one way.
Umesh,
Yes.
what's the elevation of this place?
This place is not too high. This is about 4,200 feet, 4,200 feet. So we are still near Kathmandu, not too far from Kathmandu. So
everybody go to school?
The primary school, the basic level up to high school, no, up to middle school it's free. So if anybody decide to go to finish middle school, it's free. And after that, it's a little charge, public school. It's cheaper than a private school. But when I was growing up, there wasn't many private schools. Now they have a lot of private schools. But I was in a village and there wasn't really any way that I could get to the private school. But I was, all my schooling up to high school, I was in a public school. So, and when I was there, I did pay for the middle school. It wasn't free at that time, but now it's free up to middle school. In high school now, so you have to pay, but not too much. So, that's a little bit of the valley, I wanted to get into before we get up to the mountains. So, the one slide before, there was, right before, you get to the Everest area, so that was the, the village right under, still in the Everest region, but a little bit further below than, this plain, where it's actually is right now. This plain, right now, we are on 10,000 feet above the sea level. So this particular airstrip, that airstrip got a little better now. So it's not the way we are looking at. I think they can fly a little bit more flights than a few years ago when there was only a few flights a day. But now they can fly quite a bit. So when you start climbing trip to Nepal. Here, we are talking about Mount Everest. So people would put together their programs. They want to go and climb Mount Everest. So in order to climb Mount Everest, they need certain type of a permit. So they apply for a permit. The people have been working for, the most of the people that I heard, and they tell me that they have applied about 5 years ago. It took them 5 years, in between 5 to 7 years in order to get the permit. So which means basically, when you apply for a permit, you don't get permit for this fall. You get a permit for 2015 fall or something like that. It depends on how many people had applied. It's a first come first basis, and also how many people they want to have up in the mountains at that time. So generally, they give permit up to 10 to 12 climbing expeditions at a time, which means basically, so one climbing team would have up to 12 people they can have, and sometimes it decreases down to 2 to 3 people because they are doing certain things, very special route they are trying to climb, or they are doing certain research. So that's all depends. So they give up to 10 to 12 permit in one season. So there's a most popular season spring. So there's a record of most people climb at that time for that particular season, and there's a fall. And there's only a few expeditions who had gone in the winter and climbed Mount Everest, but not many. So once you begin your expedition, you take that kind of plane, or you can walk from the all the way from base, which is take another 7 days just to get to that the airstrip, and from there to get to the Everest base camp another 2 weeks. So sometime most climbers, they would avoid that 1 week of trip and start from this point where take the plane and bring all their gear they need, or if they are trekkers, they would fly up to here, or if they are trekkers, they can take from all the way from the bottom, and takes about just to get to base camp, it takes about 14 to 17 days. So that's about, we're talking about in between 6 to 8 hours of hike, really good trekking, so you would have a little bit of break in between your lunch and and breakfast, because there's then after you keep going, and some people have done a little bit faster, of course. If you are used to with the elevation, you can do a little bit better. When you are in, sorry.
How many miles?
How many miles?
Yeah.
As far as miles concerned, it'll be very, very less. How steep it is, all depends. So from bottom to the Everest base camp, I would say a total of 35 miles. But because the steep, because of going up and down on the hill, it takes a long time just to get to the one place to another place. You would see some section. There's a nice little good trail, and some section there because of the flood. Monsoon time, there's trail breaks down. The flood would take over entire trail, and sometimes the middle of this river would be your trail because the river is not too fast right now, so you can jump from one rock to another rock. Sometimes, not all the time, it happens, but we will see some other things. What would happen along the way? So it's this time of the year you see the nice, beautiful waterfalls, nice and green. This is like a little bit late, middle of the late spring. And like I said, every year, because of the flood, you have a massive amount of water coming down from a mountain. And it would, once it gets melted in a monsoon time, which is a summer here, which is what we call summer/monsoon there, it would take over entire village sometime. And people has to move so fast that, sometimes you would see from one side of the village would say, it's coming, let's move to the, be in the safe side. So they would make big noise from one side to another side. And, in order to maintain the regular economy, they need this trail keep moving because people from all over the world would come and go to this mountain. And what they're gonna do? They would do this type of low-cost bridges in order to cross.
Those donkeys?
Yes.
Sorry?
Yeah. It's another type of animal. Generally, they are domesticated by local people there, so you can hire those animals. We're gonna see a bigger picture of that animal. Then those are the animals who would carry your, stuff you would need. Stuff you cannot carry if you are in a big expeditions like climbing trip. So you would have a lot of climbing gear. The animals would help you, and you would have to hire another yacht driver to monitor the animal all the way to wherever the animal can go up to. This is a old a little bit of caution you would see along the way because I have witnessed so many accidents. And it's really true. There are some people who had gone up in the mountains and got sick and didn't make it to stay alive, within like an hour or two. The best thing is to, beware and stay and go slowly. And once you get used to it, high elevation, you can go a little bit faster, or you can pace yourself a little bit faster. Otherwise, the first thing up in the mountains in the high elevation is just to keep yourself, in a slow pace. And once your body, acclimatized, then you would know. You can feel because your, head and your breathing and everything, it's gonna come to normal once that gets settled. This is one of the biggest villages before you get to the base camp. So once you fly from that airstrip, you would see small patches of the little villages. And then after this, suddenly you would see this big village. This village is called Namche Bajar. So we are a little over 11,000 feet high, close to 12,000 feet up here. And this village offer quite a bit of stuff here. So if you are missing, you lost your gear, you lost your gloves, or things like that, you can get them here or rent. This is a little store. It's a friend of mine. He has been running this store for a long time, and he called it himself, this store named after the Mount there's a store up in New Hampshire called International Mountain Equipment. He called the same thing up here. So now they are friends actually. IME of Namche Bazaar. So he rents and sells mountain gear, and beside a little bit of souvenir.
Now, all this is brought in by a yak?
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Or carriers or porters. So multiple things from that point, from the airstrip we saw earlier. From there, bring it up here. So to get up here, if you are regular, villagers in that area, it would take you like a day hike, which is for them it's in between 8 to 10 hours. And generally, for people who are heading to Mount Everest, it's recommended for 2 to 3 days, 2 days. So they will rest in one place and get up here on the second day.
Now, does that village get snowed in the winter?
Yeah.
How deep is the snow?
You can actually ski down. So I mean, it's really hardcore snow you can get up there, and a type of steepness it has. You can really see kids are sliding and doing sledding and things like that. You can see the mountains right behind there. It's a mountain called Kwangde. It's part of the Kwangde. Beautiful mountain. We're gonna see the picture of that. It feels like it's right behind your backyard. But from this village to get to this mountain, you head down way deep and climb up. It takes about a day and a half just to get there. It feels like it's right there. So how deep? You see?
Is that the same village?
Same village.
From
We
the
haven't.
small village where you started,
So, say it again.
from the small village where you started to the top of Mount Everest and back down, how many days?
Back down or going up and down?
Up and down?
Up and down 2 weeks.
Fast.
2 weeks. So we are leaving the village I was just showing you earlier. So we are leaving that village and looking down. So we are heading up now. So we are gaining elevation and we are heading up to the base camp. And as you can see, the firewood down there. Of course, this place. But lately, past few years, electricity been introduced in this area with the help of American Foundation. I met some American, engineers there when they were doing this hydroelectric project. So this village actually has electricity. It's pretty brand new, but they would have electricity during a certain amount of time in 24 hours. But the rest of the time, of course, they still have to use a lot of firewood, as well as electricity to keep their place nice and warm. Earlier, one of you asked me whether that's a donkey or what kind of animal. So that's the animal I call yak. Very, very strong animal. You can bring this animal down below 10,000 feet. They won't function well. So if you keep them up here in a high elevation, they do very well. So that's the type of animal. And they are very popular in Tibet. And now it's, actually it came from that area. So now people use this type of animal to cross the, major paths. Sometimes they would, there's a trail, it goes from here to Tibetan side of the village, and where actually a little bit of trade takes place. And they use this type of animal to bring the stuff in and stuff out. Very strong animal. So we're now heading to Mount Everest Base Camp. Of course, from the beginning, that's what we're doing, but trails. So trail changes, so now we're in a high elevation, and some trails are a little bit nicer than others. Those are the pack, the yaks we're carrying. Those are the climbing equipment or your foot gear. So, because up in the mountains, there's nowhere to go and shop. And there's some, along the way, you would see a little bit of, we call it tea shops. You can get some, lemonade, or sometimes they would sell, even Coca-Cola. Expensive, but pretty good when you have a Coca-Cola up in the mountains in this type of place, and also, some lodge place to stay overnight. And so when the yaks are going that direction, if you're coming down from mountains, and generally as a guy, we recommend people to stay on your left, not to the right, because if the animal push you, you can really go down deep. So these are the kind of stuff we just have to be aware of, because animals not gonna understand where you're standing. The bags are pretty heavy, and the animals keep moving. So that's another that type of accidents also I have seen happen. Actually, the mountain behind, it's a beautiful mountain. It's called Amadablam. It's a pretty much shaped like the mountain in Switzerland called Matterhorn. Yeah, it's a beautiful mountain, and a lot of people want to climb, but it has a lot of technical climbing, so not a lot of people actually make it to the top. The same mountains we are looking from a back. So we are now close to, let's see, this is about 14,000, close to 15,000 feet above the sea level. So which means another 3,000 to go in order to get to the base camp. Base camp is 18,100 or 18,000 something, 300. So 3,000 more elevation we have to gain in order to get to the base camp. And along the way, you would see, a little bit of, villages like this, and where you would see sometime, we call it Chorten. Chorten is a small stupas. Because of the northern section of Nepal, most people, they are the part of, they are Buddhist. And there's some within the Buddhism. There's three major sects: Kagyupa, Nyingmapa, and Sakyapa. You would see Sakyapa in a valley, and you would see a lot of Kagyupas in Tibet, and in the northern part of Nepal, you would see a lot of Nyingmapa sect of Tibetan Buddhists. Which means it has Nyingmapa has a lot of readings and a lot of meditation. So people in this village like to chant all the time. Most of the time, and if you walk by sometime, and people will be chanting with a little bit of beads all the time. There wasn't hospital till 80s. Mount Everest was first climbed in 1953 by Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay Sherpa. And after that, this place actually got a little bit of exposure from outside world. And so it took a long time to have a hospital and school in this area. And a Hillary Foundation and a few other foundations put together some of this project in order to keep this area alive. Because people were having sicknesses and they were dying, and all these things were to have all different viruses were introduced. But after having this hospital with the Western medicine, I think I have seen pretty big progress in their living.
Where do the doctors and nurses come from?
Yeah, here we go. I have actually a friend whose actually daughter goes to school in Boston and trying to be a nurse, and she wanted to go back here and work at this hospital. So local villagers are already in a process of being a nurse and a doctors. So and some of the doctors already introduced from a local village. From these tribal groups, and they are serving in a different community in this area. But at the beginning, it was still there, the volunteers, doctors from Canada, United States, New Zealand, Australia. So Generally, they are the part of the Edmund Hillary Himalayan Foundation. So you can apply, I guess, and so you can go and serve there for one season, which is one season is basically 3 months. But I think when you serve as a volunteer there, you can go up to 6 to 9 months. So these volunteers are there for up to 9 months. And this two actually, a nurse and a doctor, they are from Canada. I met them there, and they stayed there for 9 months.
From where do they get the water?
Say it again.
From where do they get water?
Water generally from stream or river nearby. So if you are planning on, this is along the way, still we are heading to Everest Base Camp, and sometimes the villages are not right on the trail, so they are outside the trail, and so you would see something like this. It's a long one, and if not, sometimes people has to use this type of method to cross the river. Here's my wife trying to cross this river. And earlier I mentioned the chortins. Chortins are stupas, and you would see along the way, as well as some of the slate, it has some chanting. We're gonna see some more views of different types of mountains and what it's like camping at in the evenings.
What's the temperature like?
Like I said, if you really are there in December or in January, I have been there in that type of time of the year. It was -40 in the base camp. But if you are there in the spring, during the day it's hot. Of course, you are in high elevation, and if it's no wind, it can really get hot. Sunburn. Say it again?
40 below or 40 above?
40 above. 40 above. And when you're walking, you are hot anyway. So as far as the temperature concerned, yeah, you are in the 60s or in between 60s and 70s. And but it's a dry, so it's not really like sticky. So it's kind of get comfortable. Yak stop, we call it. So we are getting really close to base camp now. So yak stop. Yak has to take all the breaks like we do. Get some more food. And you would see this type of houses there. Generally people would store some of the stuff they would need for their yaks. And so I think the yak driver generally purchase from them.
Do the yaks generally eat off the land?
Say it again, sorry.
Do they forage for themselves, the yaks? Or do they have to be fed?
Do they eat the grass or do they
Oh,
have to be fed
yeah, yeah. Well, in high elevation now, we're not gonna see a lot of, grass up here. Of course, at this in high elevation, they need to. We need to. Of course, yak driver has to feed them. But in the villages, of course, they let them go outside, out in the field. They would eat during the day, and when they when they bring them at night home, of course, they would feed still their other stuff. The mountain we're looking at right in front, it's Lhotse Sar on the right, Amadablam on the back, Mount Everest. Lhotse is the 4th highest mountain on earth. One of the highest difficult mountain to climb from this side. It's a rock face, and not many people expedition had succeeded to climb these mountains. But because of Mount Everest being the highest mountain, and so that's where the most people would like to go and climb. And so the other reason, but there are quite a few people would come and try to climb these mountains from this side, but not busy like Mount Everest. So there's not a lot of green around here now. It's all, moraine, glaciers, rocks, dry glaciers. So this is what it's like all the way now from this point. We are close to 16,000 feet high. So we are very, very close to the base camp. Say it again, sorry. No, those are the memory stones of the people who got killed in Mount Everest. Yeah. And right after Mount Everest was conquered in 1953, there was a lot of expedition from all over the world went to climb Mount Everest. Every year it was really, really busy. Who they hire? They hire local guides from this area. And what happened was the local guides, they were very, very strong climbers. They can be up in the mountains very fast and high, bring a lot of loads up, but they didn't have the technical skills. So now we have a record-setting, very high number of Sherpas got killed than climbers who went to climb Mount Everest. So it's a lot of Sherpas climbers, this memory stones there than actually Western climbers. There are quite a few Western climbers there too, but it's mostly Sherpas, memory stone. And sometime you would see like this carved. This man was killed in the mountain called Pumori, a beautiful mountain. We're gonna see a picture of that, and he's actually a friend of mine. He was climbing. He was doing a solo attempt to this mountains, which we're gonna see now in a second. So I was in the mountains at this time when he got killed in 1989.
How did he die?
Fall. This is the mountain he was trying to climb. Yeah. This is the mountain he was trying to climb, and we looked for his, body for a couple days. I actually gave 2.5 days. We never found, so we had to give up. And later, there's another group went to look up. But then year after that, I didn't have a contact with the company I was working at that time, so I don't know what happened.
Do they have locators now that climbers can carry? Electronic?
Yeah, devices.
Yeah.
It's like here. Sometimes those things works and sometimes doesn't. But especially on when I was working as a guide, when I was doing all these things, those things were not really, like right now. We see the, people missing in Mount Hood, but it's still hard to find.
Yeah.
It's, we are in a Western world with all these devices, but here it's a remote place, and, people do bring a lot of those things these days, but 5 years ago, no. So now, we are actually right near the base camp, and this is what it's like. All winter it was really, really snow-filled and ice and all these things. And as the spring comes, slowly, and the ice melts, and and you would see the monstrum like this.
That's a rock on top of ice, isn't it?
Oh, it's a rock, big
Top of
rock.
ice?
Yeah.
We never when the ice melts.
They probably have to leave before the ice melts.
Short step.
Yeah. Yeah, that same mountain, the guy George Curry, who killed, that's the mountain we are looking at. And right in front of that mountain, it's another little mountain called Kalapatar. Kalapatar actually represents is a black rock. That means so people would climb to that point and take a look at the Mount Everest from there. If you look back, that would be the mountain you would see. And if you look right in front of you, that would be Mount Everest, which you're gonna see this. And that's the picture from that point. And if you go to the Mount Everest base camp, you're not gonna see the top of Mount Everest because you are right under Mount Everest. And these are the group of people I was with to climb Mount Everest and New England Everest expedition. And we had about 8 of them as a climbing team, and besides some other, climbers who wanted to be with the team but didn't have a permit to climb Mount Everest. So there was a total of 16 or 17 of us, but other group, only 8 of them actually had a permit to climb Mount Everest. And with 8, 4 of them made to the summit. It was a very low budget team, and it wasn't really, they didn't have a lot of money at that time, so everything it was done in a low budget, but they had a very good climbing leader, and they had a really good team that supported each other. The people who actually got, who could have climbed to the top, but they gave up only because that at a certain point, you just have to wait for a second round. You cannot, when you make your decision on a climbing team, that okay, today we're gonna send 4 of you guys to the certain point, and so other 4 would wait for another day or 2 or something like that. So when they make decisions, sometimes the decision would be maybe first group would make the summit and second group not gonna make it, and maybe second group make it the summit and first group probably had to turn around. So that happens up in the mountains all the time. And so before we actually begin our expedition, actually climbing part of the work, this is what happens. Our helpers, Sherpas and porters and all this group, before they turn around, we would have a little celebration. All the mountains around here, people keep it very, it's very, very part of their life. So they think that in order to climb mountains, you have to keep the mountain god happy. So a little bit of prayer flags and a little bit chanting and all these things has to happen before you actually begin poking your ice axe and things like that on the ice. So, and once that happens, this is what it's like. You see the Mount Everest base camp. It's really crowded with all these different groups, and everybody has their different type of celebration. Different type means different group would have a own celebration. So that was our tent, our site, and one side would have one tent would have maybe 2 climbers, and some tent would have a little bit more, like a dining tent, and Sherpas, other climbers tent, maybe more than 2 or 3 people would sleep. Things that would happen. It depends on how big of a space you want to put together there. And sometimes, if the weather permits, you would bring stuff up, and sometimes if it's a weather not permit, you just wait around. So that's the mountain weather. That's what it is. It's whether you go and climb Mount Washington here or not, or Mount Everest, it's the same idea, like the weather. If it's a good weather, you can actually go up in the Mount Washington and do your summit. If not, you just have to wait. Same here to pitch one tent, because because you are up in a very high elevation, and after 2 weeks you have a total you are back here on sea level. That's how much you can get, really feel good, Then after you back up again up in the mountains with all the loads, and you gain elevation. So you do that quite a few times. So get to the base camp, and from there to Camp 1, establish Camp 1, and back to base camp, and get back on Camp 2, and get back on Camp 1, rest again. So you do that quite a few times, and generally all our meetings, all our planning would happen here in a dining tent. And from that point, we would go and climb and bring all our loads up.
The yaks are no longer there?
No longer there. Yaks can get only to the base camp. From base camp up, that's on your own, bringing all the gear. Mostly...
Umesh, you said that if the weather's bad, you can't try to go up to the summit, and you compared it to Mount Washington. With Mount Washington, if the weather's bad on top, people might say, well, let's hike around it, or let's do something different. Here, are people always obsessed with getting to the summit of Everest, as opposed to doing something different?
Yeah, actually, that's a very, very good question. We're gonna go and climb some of the mountains while we're waiting for the weather. So people do that here too.
Yeah.
Not to the Everest, because it's bad weather. You can see this wind blowing up there from the, from the side. So if that's the case, then of course, sometimes it's a long period of time waiting. People do go out and climb some other mountain around. That's really still true here in this area. And that's what we're going to be doing here. I'm going to show you that since you mentioned that. We're going to come back to that. And like I said earlier, when you are hiking in the high elevation, or when you're climbing up in the high elevation, it's really tiring. 5 minutes of hike or trek or climb, you're resting another 5 minutes. It's really hard. Then once you get used to it, then you can actually run. Yeah. So bringing all this gear up. So now it's come back to our last session of this slide. This type of gear. So you putting back up. My job when I was climbing, when I was helping this team, my job was to make sure all this ladder would get to the right place on the right time, and make sure this would set up on time for our climbers to cross and set up a first camp. The difficult section of this whole climbing is Khumbu Ice Fall, which is also known as death zone and things like that. Once you fall into this type of crevasse, and it's very, very hard for anyone to survive. Anyway, so we'll get into that a little more details a little bit later. So at this point, we're trying to. Earlier, you saw the slide of.
This is where I asked, who was the first one across the ladder?
Yeah.
Was it you?
Yeah, that's me. That's me. So I was basically, if I really have to put together the word, it would be captain of this area for me. They would say, okay. They would listen to me. I would have 6 other helpers, sometimes more, helpers to help me, bring all these things up. And so once we establish this ladder, I would be the one cross it and make sure it's nicely, screwed. Ice screws we use.
How far down?
If you,
That's one of the
we have tried this. I can't really. I can tell you maybe approximate, how deep it would be. And when I throw a piece of little rock, I can hear maybe quite a few seconds.
Well, now, were you roped?
When I said a few seconds, I would say maybe 6-7 seconds.
But were you roped, Umesh?
Huh?
Did you have a rope on you?
Well, I do not have a rope myself when I cross. But later what I would do is, you're gonna see we have a rope in between, at least just to hold it so you can yourself balance in the middle.
Now, how did you put that thing across the river?
Magic.
Yeah, magic. You put together first, then after you let go, like you would do with any ladder. You would have a long rope, and you let go, and once you get to the other side, and you cross, and you have all these devices to nicely screwed and tied it up.
Just like that.
No wonder he runs a coffee shop.
And some section you would have crossing, and some section a little bit of climbing like this. Most of the climbers, they're okay to climb, without the ladder in some section, but it's okay to put the ladder up sometime, because it will take a long time, and if you cannot cross this section on time, it's not really dangerous because of the timing. So in smaller section like this, we would have a ladder up sometime.
Isn't that the spot where you need to do most of the climbing at nighttime?
Say it again, I didn't hear.
You do most of the climbing at nighttime for this area?
No. It starts bright and early. So sometime we would leave 2 in the morning, and sometime we would leave a little bit later, 3. Mostly, after midnight.
But it's dark when you start that.
Yeah. There's another reason for that, because the wind actually takes place afternoon. So you really you don't want to be around here when the actual wind is blowing.
And you have to carry that light all the way with you.
All the way there, and once it's established, then so that's me crossing the first cross, testing it out.
Can't you trip with those spikes?
Well, you would get used to it, and
This is on the way to Camp 2?
Camp 1.
Oh, Camp 1?
Yeah, from Camp 1 to the Camp 4, you don't have to do this. It's just a traverse, and basically you're on the snow and rock and ice. So now you can actually really see on the side, once established, on the side you have a little bit of balance rope there, so when you are crossing, so you kind of balance yourself. And like I said earlier, once you are up in Camp 1 and 2, once you are acclimatized, I see people running on this. Yeah, at the beginning it's really hard. And just tell you the one story about one of our expedition member. He used to practice his sports medicine up in Haverhill. He was one of our doctor, and he crossed 1 or 2 ladder and returned to the base camp. He doesn't want to go up anymore. So it happens. It scares people very, very much. Then he returned home. He didn't stay there, and it was lucky for us that there was 2 doctors in our expedition at that time, and the other one stayed and went on to climb Mount Everest later because he didn't make it on this time to the summit. So other doctor came back. Now he doesn't practice up in Haverhill, so I can actually tell his name, but now he's in Utah.
And how many outhouses are there on the way up?
That's what the crevasses are for.
Other big groups in Europe and America. So they are actually work together. That when you get a permit, you go and get that particular things done.
How costly are the permits?
Okay, now come to permit. It costs you $10,000 per person.
Whoa.
That doesn't include food.
No, forget about the food, gear, everything. $120,000 for one Everest expedition permit.
How long?
You can have up to 12 people, or you can have only 10 people or 8 people, but you still have to make it up to $120,000.
Is that good for that season?
One season, yeah.
One season.
Is that per person, 120 or the whole group?
Whole group.
Okay, thank you. 8 to
Yeah.
10 or 12.
So after that, you return home now. So slowly
The cost is your life. Yeah.
say bye to the Mount Everest.
Umesh,
Say it again.
part of that mountain is in China, is it not?
Yes, you can climb from Tibet. You can call it China, but people in Tibet won't call it China. But you can climb. Yeah, you can climb from Everest, but main peak, it's in Nepal.
All right. Now, tell us what's happening here. Go back on that.
Oh yeah. So you're basically taking that flight back to Kathmandu.
Is he taking off or landing?
Yeah, taking off.
Or just committing suicide?
So that's my slides, and
Were you up there during the storm?
I'll take some more questions. Say again?
Were you ever up there when the storm hit?
Yeah.
Umesh, come up here where we
Yeah.
can see you.
What speed is the wind?
Well, some more questions.
Storm, avalanche, you know, in the high mountains, it happens all the time. So when you're hitting up the mountains, you know, I have seen a really, really big avalanche, you know, 2-3 minutes avalanche. It's a really, really big one. So if you are really, really near, you know, from our school, the way we learn, try to get in the biggest rock you can find, you know, high. I'm a half Tibetan and a half Burmese. Half Burmese.
Oh, Burmese.
If I really look back, my ancestor, half Tibetan and half Burmese. But in Nepal, my tribal group is called Newar. I was gonna finish his question. Okay. Avalanche and what was the?
Well, I was wondering about, you know, the big storms where you're huddled up in a tent.
Well, like I said, you know, yeah, storm. You try your best to make it, you know, sometime you would have you kind of like feel that, you know, the storm is coming. So you try to get to the, you know, maybe heading down would be better. Maybe sticking right around there. Try to stay, like I said, you know, if it's a rock, stay, you know, the best, you know, each tent is put together for all of you. You know, all the survival skills you have to use in order to protect yourself at that point.
When you set the ladders, first of all, you take these ladders and tie them together.
Climb ropes.
And then you put them out there and you go through the first crevasse. And you get everybody across the ladder, and you take the ladder with you.
No. So there's multiple ladders there. Yeah. The one we used, it was about 18 total ladders. 18.
So you cross this crevasse, get everybody across the ladder, or the next one, do the same thing. You leave it there.
Leave it there.
Until you come all the way home exactly.
Yeah, sometimes actually we can take them out. Most of the time you can't take them out. It's, you know, once you get stuck in there, it's really hard. You do your best. And,
You leave them there forever?
yeah, it's
Well, you
happening.
don't want it. So whenever
Sometimes
you
it's
come
happening.
along, you might lose your ladder.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
they also might drop it down the crevasse.
It's possible. With the
And then there
change,
you are without a ladder.
with the science, you know, with the, you probably would know all this reading from all this research that, you know, that Everests are moving, you know.
So the next year.
Yeah, you may not see it.
But it will still be if you to go back on your particular excursion. That's what she just said. Somebody can't knock it down while you're on the other side, because your excursion is.
That's like a
timed,
sportsmanship, you know, you cannot, you know, hurt another person, right?
Well, even an accident, but I mean, your excursion is timed. In other words, if you leave today, someone else is not leaving tomorrow. Isn't there a space of time before the next one comes out? I'm asking.
No, when somebody gets the permit for a certain amount of time, that's the permit for that entire season. So if I'm putting together today, that another group can come same time.
Oh, okay.
He or she can come same time. You can't say, okay, we'll give you some hands for this particular one, the one I was working. Because the type of experience I had at that time, you know, most people just give me a hand. When I said 6 people were helping me at that time, it wasn't all from our own group. It was people from a different group helping.
Did you ever have anyone die on the
Yeah.
group? And what do you do? You carry the body back?
Second.
You carry the body back?
The one, you know, is a rescue from a helicopter. Certain section you carry, you know, better rescued by helicopter, you know. Like someone asked me, you know, different, sometimes they have instruments and, you know, you can ask for a helicopter rescue.
How far up the mountain to help?
They can go up to the base camp. They have tried.
The base camp.
Yes.
One more question, and I got some other.
The temperature at the top of the mountain?
26,000 feet. It's pretty much like a still in a temperature will be from base camp, like a negative, you know, in between 20 to 40 degrees, but a wind. That's a major factor than anything else.
You look like a teenager. Must be the mountain.
All right. Now, 2 things I want to, after we thank Umesh very much. I got one other thing going on, so nobody leave the hall. I want to thank you very much. And I'm afraid we could keep you here for another hour for questions, but some of us have to get home. My children, so on and so forth. And for the second scotch. Anyhow, but I thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it. And we hope to see you here again. Umesh does not know about this, but we have 2 pounds of his very special espresso coffee, the Sherpa blend. Now, how am I going to do this? Anybody get a birthday today? No, all right. Evelyn, give me a number between 1 and 12.
8.
8 is August, right? The 8th month. Who has a birthday in August? Oh, come on. I knew this would happen. All right.